There is a difference between being smart and being wise. Being smart in the world is considered wisdom. So when you read in the book of James in the New Testament, when it talks about worldly wisdom and wisdom from above, the wisdom from above is true wisdom, while the wisdom below the earthly wisdom is what we call being smart in the world. It's not real wisdom, but because worldly people don't know any better, they call that wisdom. This is what worldly wisdom is like. Worldly wisdom is all about knowing how things work, knowing how things would likely develop, and manipulate things in order to avoid a painful outcome you don't want. That's all that worldly wisdom comes down to. Worldly wisdom is all about preserving self-validation. That is all it comes down to. For example, worldly wisdom tells you if you don't like someone or you don't like something, you need to just open your mouth and say that you don't like that individual because then they know it, you know it, it's better for both of you. This is all centered around you not liking something or not liking someone and you avoiding something you don't want. Who is the center here? The you. So worldly wisdom tells you that if you don't like something and you encounter it, you're going to feel pain, and one day that pain is going to leak out. So to prevent trauma, you are transparent. You just speak what you think. That's what worldly wisdom says. They tell you to just be honest. Wisdom from above, which is true wisdom, reveals to you, hold on a minute, you are the one thinking like this. And this is your dissatisfaction. This has nothing to do with what is going on nor with the other. So you have to face yourself. And nobody gives you the right to think negative just because you will something. You have no right to will anything at the expense of someone else. And you especially have no right to just throw out your pain at someone else and think you are doing the right thing. You are responsible and accountable for what you contribute to. So if you don't like someone or you don't like something, it is you. So you need to be fixed. You need to acknowledge this. But here's the thing, worldly people do not want to evaluate their own way of thinking. They seldom do. They often resist it. So they follow the wisdom of the world, which is being smart. And sometimes they just avoid things they don't like by being passive aggressive, by avoiding stuff, or just throw it out to be relieved. It's all worldly wisdom. It's not wisdom from above, because wisdom from above tells you to look at the bigger picture, and once you look at the bigger picture, you will see that your will often doesn't line up, that your will often contradicts itself, and that your will cannot be defended. So you are commanded to repent. You see the difference here? The wisdom of the world versus the wisdom of God. Look, the wisdom of the world tells you to look for people that are popular, people that are wanted, and people that have a good reputation. Why? Because people that have a good reputation, people that are rewarded by the crowd, they don't become the target of negative energy that quickly. Why? Because they are protected. They have a charm on them. So you want to be around those people to reap the benefits of the social rewards they're receiving. That's what worldly wisdom tells you. Worldly wisdom tells you that you need to be sure that you are validated. That's what worldly wisdom is all about. Wisdom from above tells you not to look for the rich and powerful. Why? Because heavenly wisdom looks at the bigger picture. Heavenly wisdom reveals to you that the only reason you want to be around the rich and powerful is to preserve yourself in order to avoid violence, and that's why you use the wealth and the status of that individual to be relieved. So heavenly wisdom reveals this about you, this self-centered motive, this parasite motive of yours. Now you are not a parasite, but it's a parasite motive you have. So heavenly wisdom reveals this about you. And heavenly wisdom reveals to you how wrong it is. Because the only reason you value those important people is to avoid being around unimportant people. And why don't you want to be around unimportant people? Because you don't want to waste your time as if it's all about you. Heavenly wisdom also reveals to you that being around the rich and powerful Just because they're rich and powerful and you will be validated and you have relief is not a good idea, because often those people are under a satanic charm. So when you are around them, you will deal with that satanic charm. And here's another thing. Those people that are rich and powerful, they often have people that can't stand them, they want to do things to them. But those rich people often are under a satanic charm, so that satanic charm hinders that negative energy from flowing towards them. But here's the thing, you are not under a satanic charm. And here's the thing also, you're operating in the negative. So because you operate in the negative energy can easily locate itself towards you. So you are not under a satanic charm. So and you are around the rich and powerful who are most likely under a satanic charm. When the enemies of those rich and powerful people want to do something to someone, who are they going to approach? They can't approach the rich and powerful because the satanic charm hinders the outlet of their negative energy. But let's say that you hang around a minister often, and the minister doesn't mind. You are on good terms with one another. But let's say that there is this stalker that wants to take out on that minister. And that stalker notices that you are often around the minister. When that stalker is desperate to leak out his violence, but he can't find a minister, whom do you think is going after next? You! And that's why there are some worldly people, and I'm saying many, there are some people in the world that avoid the rich and powerful. Not because they have something against them being rich and powerful, but because they see the dangers that comes along with it. There are some worldly people that see the bigger picture of some things. This does not mean that they by default are looking at the bigger picture, but they see the bigger picture of some stuff. So worldly wisdom versus heavenly wisdom. Another thing, worldly wisdom tells you that you need to try someone out before you marry them. But here's the thing, practically it has been proven by sociologists, by psychologists, and by many other researchers that couples that marry instantly without a test period, they remain together for a longer period of time and they are less likely to divorce. Why? Here's the deal. Worldly wisdom is centered around self-validation. What do I want? What do I want to put up with? So worldly wisdom operates from an unreal point of view. That is self-validation. So the reason you want to try out the other individual is because you don't want to waste your time and you want to be validated. So you are really using the other individual to be in comfort. And when you have two people using one another to be at comfort, that's not going well. And you have the mindset, if I don't like this, I'm gone. And you don't care at all what the time you spend with the other will do with the other. So it's a very wicked mindset. If, however, two people come together and they realize, well, this is a risk, we will never get the time back if this goes wrong, but we're going for it. And we just have to accept each other how they are and work from there. If that's the mindset and people get together, then they know what they got themselves into and they know it's not about them. They know that the self has to lose in order to win something bigger. So you have worldly wisdom and you have heavenly wisdom, which is the true wisdom. Understand this, folks. Most people in the world, they're looking for worldly wisdom. How to prevent something they don't want. Whether or not what they don't want is really dangerous or not doesn't matter. It's just about them being validated. How to avoid something unpleasant and to attach itself to comfort. Self-validation is the obsession of worldly people. There are very, very few worldly people. You can hardly find them. There are very few worldly people that see self-validation for what it really is. A hoax. Something that's unreal. A fiction that a fiction that contradicts itself. When you look at Christ, when Christ came to the earth, look at the apostles he selected. The disciples, I mean. Peter had anger management issues. He was carrying a sword with him, ready to attack people. Maybe Peter suffered from PTSD, I'm not sure. But it's obvious that that guy if he has been through stuff that he was so vigilant and ready to cut people's ears off. Then you had Thomas. Thomas had a lot of doubt, and he was quite fearful often. Then you had a guy called Matthew, who used to be a corrupt tax collector, because which tax collector was not corrupt at the time in the Roman Empire? Then you had many of those other disciples that often they didn't notice things quickly. They often repeated the same mistakes over and over again. According to the world, they would be called stupid. Yet these were the men he wanted to be around. And worldly people that operate in worldly wisdom would think, Christ, come on now. Look for the minister who has finished an education. Don't go for that fisherman with anger management issues called Simon. He comes from an oppressive background. He only knows about catching fish. He probably cannot read. Come on now, Christ, what are you thinking? Christ sees it differently. It's this Simon whom Christ named Petros, or where we get the name Peter from, is this Peter that became the pastor of the first congregation. It's this man that later became the leader of the movement that Christ left behind, and this movement would change the world forever. Because here's the thing, Christ looked at the bigger picture. And because he looked at the bigger picture, he acknowledged that short-term suffering is worth a long-term, is worth for a long-term benefit. Worldly people who operate in self-validation, they don't have this. Worldly people would have gone to if they would have lived in the Roman Empire, if would have gone to Jerusalem, looked for the most educated men, they would have looked at their resume, they would have looked at those that had a good standing among the community and selected them in order to have a social influence. No, Christ didn't. Christ knew better. Look at the Apostle Paul. If you look at his resume over time, now, if the Apostle Paul today, let's say if you have someone like the Apostle Paul today that has a history of people not liking him, going against him, even went against, was even so-called disrespectful against the elders once. If you had someone like that today, with such a history and such a resume, most companies, even most churches, won't even hire him, saying that's his bad news. But it was this man that the Holy Spirit selected to spread true Christianity. I'm not talking about what people call Christianity today. True Christianity, biblical revelation was spread through this man, through the Lord used all the sufferings that Paul had gone through to spread true Christianity through biblical revelation throughout the world. I mean, the most influential man of the first century was not the Roman emperor. It was not some Roman senator, nor some gladiator, nor some mystic. It was the Apostle Paul. And all historians that look at how the world history developed would say that it's this Apostle Paul with the message he spread around that transformed the Roman Empire, which would transform what we later call the Western society and would change the whole course of history. But if you would have looked at Paul's circumstances at the time, you would say, man, this man is not equipped. This man is only going to cause trouble. This man, bad news. Worldly wisdom versus wisdom from above. As I mentioned before, worldly wisdom is smartness. And there's nothing wrong with being smart. Being smart can get you out of trouble. Being smart can help you trick people to get what you want. Being smart can get you out on a date. Being smart can get you hooked up, giving you sexual advantages. That's all that being smart can get you. But being smart is short-lived. Because the things you get by being smart, there will always come more along with it. As I mentioned before, being smart can get you out on dates. if you know how to dress well, speak the right words, you can cause people to fall in love with you. Narcissists do that often. Let's say you're not a narcissist, but you do this and you get out on a date. Let's say you are a young lady and you use these tricks to get out on a date with a man. And you think, oh, he's the man, he is it. You are blinded by the short-term success that you have the date. You are blinded by the short-term benefit. Once you are with that guy, you will realize he's a guy just like every other guy, and that he has issues that needs to be resolved just like any other guy. But because you're looking for Mr. Right, and you don't want to waste your time, you want to find the right one, and you know you have success with someone that you perceive as the right one, you are blinded, you've lost perspective. So it is worldly wisdom you're using, but it's short-lived. The same thing, you can have a guy, because this often happens. Yeah, you can have a guy who has become smart through observation, and he knows how to speak to women, and he gets out on a date. So he's totally excited, as you can expect. But there's more coming to it. Maybe this girl, he finally has his phone number and it's on a date. Maybe she has demons attached to her. Maybe she has all kinds of wrong expectations of men that are very harmful. But you know what? The guy is so smart, he got her on a date. Most other men tried to get her phone number and she refused them all. She's very socially distanced, but this guy, he managed to get it. So he thinks he's the man. Well, he's about to find out that there's more coming with it. And here's the thing. Worldly wisdom is empowered by the paranormal. So when you operate in worldly wisdom, there are times, I'm not saying always, but there are times demons, without you asking them, will begin to assist you. Why will demons assist you when you operate in worldly wisdom? Is to deceive you into thinking that you don't need the Most High, that you don't need deliverance, that you can do it all by yourself. And when demons assist you, man, you know it's wrong. You know that there's a disaster coming. So, worldly wisdom versus wisdom of above. That's why the New Testament tells you that worldly wisdom is devilish. Because the center of worldly wisdom is self-validation. And self-validation itself is not something real. So when you operate, even though you operate factually, but you operate factually from a basis that's unreal, how can it ever go right? It can't. Yet, this is the basis of how the world operates, self-validation. This is the mindset of the fallen mind. That's how all people operate. Eventually, though, to them being born in a fallen state. That's why we need to become born again and renewed in our mind. Look, I'm on Facebook once in a while. Years back, I used to be on Facebook often. I was in my late teens back then. And let me tell you, the reason I joined Facebook was to spread the gospel. Of course, there were other benefits, meeting new people, all of that, but the number one reason I joined Facebook was to spread the gospel. MySpace. I thought about joining MySpace, but I felt the strong urge to go to Facebook. And you know what? Since then, MySpace kind of collapsed, and Facebook became the dominant one. There was a time that Facebook was not dominant. It was just some website that was made and people didn't even bother with it. I can still remember that time. It wasn't that long ago. Let me tell you, I've encountered many so-called believers. They call themselves Christian. Some of them call them Messianic Jew. They have all these titles. I've encountered many that share biblical posts, they call them, on social media, but when you analyze critically and in the bigger picture, what the message you're sharing is not the gospel. It's worldly wisdom in the name of Jesus Christ. And because of worldly wisdom, a lot of people acknowledge it. Why? Because it's about self-validation. They feel validated. And because it has the name Jesus Christ, they think it's the right way. It's not. When it comes to marriage, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to business, when it comes to all areas of life, especially social life, most people follow worldly wisdom because it works, and it often works quickly. Why does work quickly? Because demons support it. Of course, when you operate in a mindset that demons support, you're going to get results quickly because most people around operate in that mindset. So of course you're going to win quickly. But is this winning worth it? Look, as a believer, you're called out of the world. You are in the world, but you're not of the world. So you ought not to operate in the wisdom of the world. Look, you can be smart. Smartness is a tool, but you should not rely upon it. Let me repeat that. Smartness is a good thing. I praise you if you are smart, but being smart is not something you should rely upon, because that's a trap. That's a trap of the wisdom of the world. The moment you rely upon smartness, you are operating in the wisdom of the world. And by doing that, you have lost perspective, you're operating in darkness, and you attract demons onto you. Well, that's all I'm saying for now. And I'm encouraging you to walk by faith. And look, there are some outcomes that you really wanted. Maybe it's that girl that you wanted to date, or maybe it's that guy that was so handsome that you thought he's going to be my husband. Or maybe it's nothing about the sexual relationships thing. Maybe you don't even bother much with that. Maybe it's that business that you want. And you made your effort to start your own business, but due to unfair circumstances or things you didn't foresee, it collapsed. And now you're thinking, why didn't I know this before? Or, look, I don't really know what outcome you wanted to have, but was frustrated. But let me tell you, most of the time, when an outcome that you long for is frustrated, it is a protection in disguise. And I can relate to that. There were outcomes I longed for that were frustrating, and at the time I was thinking, why? I saw similar outcomes happening quickly with others, and I began to think, maybe I'm not blessed. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. That's a lie of the devil. There are outcomes you wanted. If those outcomes would have taken place, those outcomes would have short-term benefits for you, but those short-term benefits would expire, and with expiration, you would be left with a lot of trouble. So those short-term benefits that you were after, you didn't knew it was short-term benefits, you thought it's just a benefit, but those benefits would have come along with a lot of stuff. Well, let me say it like this. The outcomes you wanted may have brought more consequences with them that you could have seen at the time. Because if you would have seen all the consequences that would have come along with it, probably you wouldn't have wanted that outcome anymore. And that's how it is with most people. And look, worldly people operate in worldly wisdom, and worldly wisdom, being smart, can be beneficial. Let's say that you recognize narcissistic behavior, or let's say let's say that you have someone who has learned to recognize violent people, not narcissists, but violent people. Let's say you can recognize violence quickly. That's being smart, and that's why you can avoid violent people. Okay, but that's the only thing you're doing. You're avoiding violent people. You don't realize that you cannot always avoid violent people, that sometimes you need to overcome people by operating in supernatural. Now, because you only have worldly wisdom, you only know how to avoid, but you don't know how to live. You're only operating in avoidance. So if you have two girls, one got involved with a boyfriend that ended up physically assaulting her, then you have another girl that saw that guy before and said, not this guy. That second girl had worldly wisdom. She recognized the guy was violent, so she ran away. The first girl didn't notice any of it, so she was trapped. So people would say, that second girl, she's wise. No, she's not wise, she is smart. The second girl, let me say the first girl, lacked understanding. Because if that first girl would have had that understanding, she would have avoided the guy also. And that girl that was smart, she also has a lot of wrong thinking patterns that hinders her from operating in a relationship. So just because someone is smart and the smartness brings them some benefit doesn't mean they are all right. Well, that's all I want to say now about worldly versus heavenly wisdom. And remember, wisdom from above is the true wisdom. The wisdom in the world is just smartness. Often smartness assisted by the paranormal. There are short-term benefits, many, but they all expire often very quickly, and they all have side effects, serious, violent side effects. Well, walk in the supernatural, walk by faith, and it will not be easy. I can relate to that. However, it is worth it. Most people, if they would have looked at my background, where I came from, they never would have thought that I would be so anointed, that I would have such understanding. They would have thought a lot of low things about me, and a lot of people did think a lot of low things about me, but they didn't look at the bigger picture. A lot of people rejected me. Now, they acted out against me. They said bad stuff about me. They thought they had the right to mistreat me because, well, they could get away with it. They thought they had the right to become violent towards me. They thought all of those bad stuff. And because it brought them relief and people tolerated them and excused them, they thought, well, that's it. They didn't look at the bigger picture. They didn't look at the bigger picture that what was really happening is that the Lord allowed them to bury me in order for the Lord to glorify himself through me later on. They were burying me thinking I was a corpse, thinking nothing good would come from me. But I was really a seed planted by God to reveal his glory later on. And the Lord just allowed their violence and used their violence for his purpose. This does not excuse their violence. And what they don't realize is that by them operating in violence towards me, they are operating in darkness. And by them operating in darkness, they have attracted negativity into themselves. And with that, they've also attracted demons onto them. So the short-term benefits they had of being violent towards me have expired a long time ago, and now they're the ones left with those demons, with those negative energies, and with all the bitter side effects of that negativity. That's why I'm telling you, operate in true wisdom, not in what they call worldly wisdom. Smartness has its place. Use smartness. Have smartness, but don't let smartness have you. And don't let demons, through smartness, use you. That being said, be at peace.